child trafficking, according to my own understanding, I think it is the transporting a child from his origin or destiny to a known place without his consent or parents' recognition.
Actually, I'm a Karamojong by tribe, and when I was in Karamoja, do you know some children can be trafficked by your aunt, by your uncle, or your dad, or someone else. But for me, I was trafficked by my aunt. She told me, let's go to Kampala. You're going to study. After all that, my mother never had money to pay for me school fees. She decided to let me go. But when I reached to Kampala, my aunt never also had money. She decided to take me to Owino market to sort beans, whereby at that age I could not manage. They could give me a big sack and toll to sort the beans and the groundnuts at 5,000. And by then I was 8 years, when I could not manage to sort, I could not manage to clean the beans very well. And the boss could abuse me. I was like, when like the back can pain me. So in the evening they could give me that 5K. Then I could go home. Then I give it to my aunt. After giving it to her, she could not even send it to my aunt, because in a month I could make like 100,000. And I thought that she will send the money to my mom, but she could not send. She used to use the money like for her own, and she buys her own things. She could only give me 1,000 to eat or to find something to eat. But when I reached, I'm fed up of sorting beans, I'm like, how can I do this at this tender age? So I decided to go to the streets of Kampala. Then I spent a month, because in Karamoja I was in Fitu. I spent a month on the streets, begging, starving everything there from the street, getting food, anything which to improve on my status. So the drilling members came on the street. They were like, you guys, how are you? I was like, I'm fine. Because in drilling social workers, there was a Karamojongo in my tribe. And I talked to her, even I narrated my story to her. She was like, can you please show me where you stay?
The situation of child trafficking, I will approach it starting from the situation in Uganda, which is one of the East African countries. Uganda currently has close to 70% of a young population. And with that, predominantly the young people are looked at as a source of income, as a source of survival for the families. And because of that, then the children are pushed to look at generating income, generating a revenue, a sort of revenue for the families. Right from the past, the cultural systems always put that the boys had to go herding while the girls had to go digging. All that was for the goal of having food into the home. And with the global changes that are happening, we are seeing that even now, as families don't necessarily have land to cultivate or animals to look after, they're looking for alternatives. And what we see is that children are easily being sold off into slavery, they're easily being handed over, they're easily being trafficked out because of the poverty situation and because of still the fact that they look at the child as a source of income.
I'm 18 years old. 1 year back, I was working in a certain bar. And this bar, she was a lady who employed me. She was a lady who employed me. I was working as a waitress in that bar. So at first she used to pay me, but as time went on, something like 2 weeks, she stopped paying me. She told me that in order to get my salary, I have to sleep with her clients. In that, when you don't sleep with a client, you don't get any payment. So you have to behave well, speak to the clients, and as you sleep with them, that's how you gain your salary. It depended. There was no actual money. Some will pay you something like 10K, others 15K, something like that, but it was not negotiable. After that, I was recruited by a certain man. That man also came in that bar as a client. So he saw me. He asked me that, how are you paid here, something like that. I explained him the experience I've been going through. I told him that at first I was being paid, but right now I'm not paid anything, because that man saw me talking to my boss as I was taking to him that drink. After that, I asked for money from him, and I told him, don't you need anything, like something like that? He told me no. And he asked me that, is that the only thing you do to earn a living? I told her yes, because by then I was vulnerable. I had dropped out of school. My parents had separated by then. So we went separate ways. So to earn a living, I had to sleep with these men to get something to eat, to live my life. So this man helped me out. He gave me his number, and I contacted him. He told me the place where I should meet him, but at first I was scared, thinking that he might do the same thing to me, because that's how the other woman came into my life. He was so sweet, she was so sweet, but not knowing that I'll end up exploiting my body for money. As I went to this man, he told me that, do you still need to go back to school, or do you still need any vocational skilling? I told him yes, but I have nowhere to sleep, and I don't think that when I go for that vocational skilling, I'll get something to eat. I get somewhere to sleep.
When I was 13 years, I had a boss, and I was working in the guest house as the hand washer. Then after, when I was washing the clothes, I was washing for those youth men who work in the morning. So then I used to work in those guest houses. So when I was working there in the guest houses, there were different men, and I used to wash for different people, and they were men. So when I was working there, at first they used to pay me little less money, and after they told me that I'm going to be used as a sex victim in advance of paying me. So when I had a man, I was working with that man, and that man was working with me. Then that man told me that to pay you, you have to first sleep with me. Then after I said that, how can I do that thing? Because I wanted money. I had nothing to do. I wanted money. So then that man started using me. I used to go there in the morning to wash clothes. Then after, when I was washing clothes, that man could come in the evening, and if I go there to ask him that I want my money, he just uses me. He tells me that you just go there in the bedroom, I'll find you there. Then after, that man used to use me as a sex victim. I was the one who was getting money, because my mother told me when I sat my P7, I had nothing to do because school fees was not there. I had to stop there, not going to school. Then my mother told me that you go there and start working such that you can get money to provide here at home.
Uganda Youth Development Link is an organization that is mainly working with out-of-school young people. We started in 1993, and our main focus is the vulnerable young people who are out of school. And the issues that we've been mainly focusing on, issues to do with sexual exploitation of children, how to prevent HIV/AIDS among children, among the young girls and women, And we have programs to do livelihood skills training for the young people out of school. We have programs with skilling, with entrepreneurship. So our main programs, as you see, the focus is mainly on how do we build the resilience, how do we build the skills of the young people who are out of school, and that is our main focal point as an organization. We did a report as an organization in 2011 where we showed that we had an increase of children who had been sexually exploited from 12,000 to 18,000, that's in 2011. But again, we also see the report that came out that was done by Ministry of Gender on violence against children, 2018. It was also showing us that 1 in 3 girls and also 1 in 6 boys who are aged between 18 and 25 years had faced some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. And 11% of the girls who were interviewed at the time had faced some form of violence in their lifetime.
The push factors at the household level, for example, domestic violence, is one of the factors that has led to so many cases, to so many children being driven out of the family setup. And yet we believe that children should be in families, being the basic units. But the situation at the family level is not all that good in some of the families. And we are seeing children being driven from the family setting, coming to the streets in the city or any other places apart from the family setup.
Child exploitation is a growing challenge in East Africa. Now, in the East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, I will talk about child trafficking. That is a cross-border issue where all the East African countries are actually a source of children that are being trafficked. They are transit routes and they are also destinations of children. So the issue of child exploitation, particularly child trafficking, is a key problem in East African countries, and it's something that we feel must be addressed, and now.
When UNDPC noted that Uganda on a daily over 50 girls move out of the country to be exploited, to be trafficked out of to the UAE. And when we come back here, commercial sexual exploitation of children is rampant. There are those spots that we know in Kampala, in the suburbs of Kampala, where if it's 100, over 50 or 55 or 60% of the girls in those suburbs are exploited sexually. Why? Because they are trying to fend for a living and they are trying to survive, maybe seek for shelter, seek for food, seek for basic needs, and at the end of the day, it shoots the sexual exploitation trend within Uganda.
Despite the fact that there are great interventions by government and non-state actors, we are seeing that violence against children, the cases are increasing, but it could be that reporting is also faring well. It might not be that the cases are increasing, but because the reporting mechanism has been strengthened, in that we have different actors that are reporting cases of child exploitation.
And we have seen that the children have been trafficked internally in the country, but of recent we are seeing now children from Uganda being taken across the borders and into Kenya. So the situation at East African level, we are seeing it manifest as cross-border trafficking, where children are coming from Uganda and cheap labor in Nairobi for housemaids and other forms of labor. We are seeing the albinos in Tanzania being suitable for witchcraft and so are trafficked for their organs, their body organs. We are seeing very many other children who are unaccounted for, who keep on disappearing at different points. And all this we are anticipating are a result of child trafficking.
In the slum areas, some of them have been domestic workers before. When they transition to sexual exploitation, they go to slum areas. And so slum areas have characteristics of crime, a lot of juvenile delinquency, a lot of challenges then girls face. And because they have no livelihood, or for them to be able to earn a decent living, they end up being sexually exploited. They end up selling their bodies or to serve their services to people who are willing to serve them, who are willing to give them some money. Sometimes it could be monetary, sometimes it could not be even monetary, it could be non-monetary. And that's a challenge because at the end of the day, these girls are being exposed to vices, to very big problems, that especially sexually transmitted infections, teenage pregnancies, issues of STIs, issues of HIV, and these are critical issues that really need to focus on in terms of reproductive health of these young girls is concerned.
Rahab Uganda for the past 13 years has been responding to this issue of commercial sexual exploitation. And we should acknowledge that so many girls have been rescued. When we talk about this rehabilitation home where I'm right now, over 300 girls have been rescued, have been withdrawn, reached to, and over, I can say 300 have passed through the home and they've been resettled, rehabilitated very well. Most of them have joined university, most of them have joined vocational school, most of them are in school right now as we speak. So the rescue, the withdrawal interventions have done a lot in curbing commercial sexual exploitation. But also Rahab Uganda has worked so much with the families. How do we empower the families to protect their children? Because we know every child has at least a family. So we parents, how do we protect our children from being victims of commercial sexual exploitation? How do we try to maintain the safety of our children? So we have worked closely with families, especially the families of the survivors that we have worked with, to avoid this repeated cycle of exploitation. But also working with the community structures like the local council leaders, schools, community groups, youth groups, through advocacy campaigns, awareness raising campaigns, to talk about this plight of commercial sexual exploitation.
Children, we consider them as the key champions of ending child exploitation, not only in Uganda, but even in the other countries where Tourism Netherlands operates. We consider them as the voices of their fellow children. So we work with the children, we support them, we give them the necessary child-friendly information, that they reach out to the communities, they talk to fellow children, they talk to their parents. In some of the schools, we have child protection clubs that were initiated by the children that are attached to our partner organizations. So these clubs reach out to fellow children with the necessary information. They give peer support to each other. So yes, we feel the children, especially when we involve them in everything that we do, they are the key voices for the protection of fellow children.
We have had child rights clubs in various schools in those districts. We have also gone ahead to have children's camps, which are more of empowerment, advocacy empowerment camps. And we have had child parliaments, children parliaments, where we have had legislators come and listen to the children debate and also speak to the children, and later on take the issues that the children have brought to the parliament, to the floor of parliament. We have had even children meet with the deputy speaker and also the legislators in the chambers, in the speaker's chambers, and are able to articulate the issues that have come up as a result of the various meetings that they have had.
Probably it is something that we all ought to put in the children that we have, all our children, to help them know their worth, to help them know that they are children worth, and they are valuable, they have that value within them. So they should avoid going with any person, looking out for those petty things, and avoid strangers, because strangers usually exploit children.
The girls now we are engaging them quite well, because one of the issues that we value a lot is the issue of child participation. How can they participate in the programs, in the designing of the programs, in implementing the programs, and even evaluating the programs? It's very keen as far as we are concerned, child participation. And here is that we are focusing a lot on the issue of the girls advocacy group. We have what they call that girls advocacy group, which has been formed for 2 years, 3 years. They've been undergoing a series of trainings, okay, in terms of resilience, in terms of coping with the trauma, coping with stress, public relations, how do you communicate, how do you communicate with peers. So these girls have also been now ambassadors themselves, who have gone through the challenge of being sexually exploited, but they're also able to talk to their fellow girls. Sometimes even reach out to the boys.
In Uganda, we have made several efforts to ensure that we can be able to, first of all, protect, secondly, prevent, and then also prosecute and then have partnerships. And currently what we have in the forms of partnerships and also as prevention and protection is we have the Sauti 116, where if you have any form of abuse to a child, whether it is child trafficking or any other forms of violation against a child's rights, you're able to call that number, and the team, the ministry, is able to assign probation officers and officers of the law to ensure that the child is protected, withdrawn, and receives all the justice that they need.
It's like the government should at least construct rehabilitation centers for those children on the streets, and also take them back to the school. Because when they are trafficked, some of them they are tortured, some of them are kidnapped, so they end up going in different places where they end up going to the streets, they end up joining bad groups like that. At least create awareness about child trafficking. Like when someone is trafficked, ought to state strict laws against child trafficking.
The children out there, I'd like to encourage them to keep on advocating for their rights, to keep on fighting for them, because we'll thank the UNCRC and other organizations which are taking part in ensuring that everything goes well on the part of children. So the children themselves should take part in ensuring that things go well in them by fighting for their rights. They should know how to stand and how to say no when they feel like people are trying to neglect them or not to give them the rights that they deserve.
The message I would give to the parents is that they should not relax. It's their responsibility to raise their children, to protect them. It's their primary responsibility to ensure that their children are protected and are provided for.